So I hope we are online now. Yes, stream health and it's starting.
Yep, it's done.
So we are live now. So welcome everyone to the Über-Pronounciation stream with Bismarck.
Hello.
And today we will mainly do two things. First of all, I will try to teach Bismarck a little bit of Austrian because there's actually a certain joke involved with this. And then we will just interact with the community as much as possible in what your questions are about German and Austrian and what words you want to have translated or other stuff. And let's see where it goes. And here we have already the first point, totally here to hear you say squirrel. And this is very interesting, squirrel, because in Austria we determine if someone can speak Austrian with basically the same word and one more. We want people to say squirrel tail. And squirrel tail in Austrian is Ohrkatzelschwarf. And I will write this now down to show you how it works. So, Bismarck, can you say Ohrkatzelschwarf?
Ohrkatzelschwarf.
Yeah, perfect. As you can see, Bismarck traveled very wide, so he's already able to say it. And this is Ohrkatzelschwarf. And this is basically Ohrkatzel is squirrel and Schwarf is Schweif in German and is a special word for tail, but it's more an ancient word. So, come on, PowerPoint, fuck off. So this is what we have. So if you can say Ohrkatzelschwarf, you are officially able to speak Austrian. And to show you the difference, Ohrkatzel in German is Eichhörnchen oder Eichkätzchen, which basically means oak cat. Or what's the diminutive of cat in English? Do you know, Bismarck?
Kitten, maybe, but that's a small one.
Yeah, it's like oak kitten.
Well, there is the other word, but I'm not sure if for you we can say it.
You mean oak pussy cat?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you can see, there's quite some difference between these German and Austrian. But the thing is, actually, what you see above here, we don't write that. The written language in Austria is with very few differences, is basically the same as in German. So we have the same written language for, I would say, 98%, but we speak very differently. Or, well, at least I think Northern Germans have quite a hard time understanding Austrian dialect.
Over Germans have a quite hard time understanding anything. So
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. You're also more from the southern region, so you don't have a problem. So,
yeah.
then let's
Funny
look.
though that like in Austrian you guys say like, oh, in UK if you can say Ohrkatzelschwarf, then you can speak Austrian, because in a way that's the always the story with the English, that the Germans can't say squirrel,
Yeah,
and then they can they find out who's the spy and who's not, and a person who can say squirrel is obviously not a spy, and a person who cannot say squirrel is a spy. I'm not quite sure if that's actually going to work out in reality, but that's always the story they give.
I mean, and this was for me the interesting part because in English it's always this with the squirrel, and then I realized, hey, we use the same animal for a similar thing. So quite the irony, and also I noticed that in Spanish, for instance, the name for the squirrel is also ardilla, which is also quite a weird word in general. And also squirrel and Eichhörnchen or Ohrkatzel are also quite weird words in respective German. So generally, this little cute animal seems to be a language anomaly in most
Yeah.
languages.
In French, it's écureuil, and I knew that, but like where I live, essentially, there's like maybe 10 squirrels living around the neighborhood where I live. And a couple of months ago, when we first moved here, I was talking with my girlfriend. We were walking down the road, and I saw the squirrel just running across the street. And I wanted to say in French, "Oh, look, there's a squirrel." So what I should have said is like, "Oh, il y a un écureuil. Hein? Là-bas, il y a un écureuil." And instead, what I said, "Oh, regarde, là-bas, il y a un cornichon," which means over there is a gherkin.
A what?
How is it called? A gurke.
Okay.
Yeah, cucumber.
A
Over there's a
cucumber, yeah.
there's
A
there's a
cucumber.
cucumber. Like I completely got it wrong, and I didn't even realize. And she just looked at me. It's like I'm together with a retard, essentially. That kind of look, and I was just like, "What's wrong?" And it's funny because in my mind I said écureuil, but out of my mouth came cornichon, which is completely different. But that's it's a little story there for squirrels and my life. Yeah, pickle. That's it. Cornichon is actually a pickle.
Ah, pickle, yeah, pickle.
I think apparently you can say gherkin. Apparently it's a legal word, but most people don't know it. But I actually saw it written somewhere the other day, and I thought, oh, that's strange because that obviously comes from German, which is Gurke. But a lot of Brits apparently don't, or like English-speaking people don't know the word gherkin, even though it's apparently a legal word.
Okay, well. So then let's look at the chat if we have any questions or inspirations about the stream, because we have also, yesterday I got one in the comments. So you have any questions for some words? Do you want to have any pronunciation visitors or anything else? I have a question. Were accent in German ever a problem in the Wehrmacht during World War II as far as communication between different units?
Yes.
Do you know something about it?
I know in the First World War, apparently there were big troubles. And before that, during the War of Unification, and when the Germans invaded France in 1870, apparently there were some battalions, obviously coming from different areas. In that time, there was very little, well, I wouldn't say very little, it was just starting, but there was less communication, of course, between the German provinces than before. People kind of stay in their regional area, and the only time they actually got out of that area is pretty much when they joined the army and marched to another country. And apparently, there were some difficulties in establishing communication, on clear communication, maybe not communication that was established, but clear communication between different units sometimes. And that was the Germans experienced that during their invasion of France in 1870. I'm not quite sure. I think for France, for example, they standardized their language under Napoleon, I think, where the kind of High French that we know now kind of developed and was centralized in Paris and kind of spread from there, because all the regions obviously spoke a different kind of language. And you still have people in Brittany and so on speaking a completely different language if they want to than the High French. And you kind of had the same in German, although this kind of High German language only developed after or with the unification and so on. So I would think that a normal soldier, let's say in 1914 from Bavaria, speaking to a German soldier from up the Rhine or near Hamburg area, would probably have more difficulties talking to each other than they would have now.
Yeah, I mean, there's still quite some troubles because I lived in Hamburg, and when I came first there, my German was definitely not as bad as most of other Austrians, and some people had really quite problems there. And for the Second World War, I think I know that I think they usually exchanged because they integrated the Austrian army, and I think they usually exchanged the officers and NCOs in some cases. So I guess they took probably some people from Bavaria that were more familiar with our language. And after the Second World War, I know that Austria or Austrian politicians put a bigger emphasis on our dialect to distance themselves from Germany. And I think a professor of mine mentioned that actually the Wiener Deutsch, the Vienna German, basically died out due to this. And the funny thing is, in Austria, we have very different dialects all over the place, but we usually understand each other if we talk a regular Austrian. But Germans have quite a problem with listening to that, and I actually have had people I think in Hamburg, they saw an Austrian television news program, and they speak very, very well German, and even they had sometimes problem understanding certain words when they got a little bit angry. So for me, it's like, oh my God, how you deal with any dialects, because we have very different dialects in Austria. So it's could be, probably was at certain points a big problem, because back then they probably traveled less and even less communication in overall.
Yeah, I think that the big problem for the Austrians was more during the First World War, actually, when obviously it was Austria-Hungary, when you put like Austrians in charge of Hungarian battalions and so on, and they would scream at them in Austrian, and all the Hungarians would just look at them and it's like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think also in First World War, I think we had a real leadership problem in general, from what
Yeah.
I know, because as I only read a little bit, but basically I think our troops did pretty well when they were under German leadership, but not so well.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, one could say, well, if you look how far you came in First World War and then in the Second World War in relation to France, it seems basically we always do better with another leadership from someone else. So question, are you from Pinzgau? No, I'm not from Pinzgau. I'm from Upper Austria. I was born in Linz and I grew up in Mühlviertel. That's north of Linz, basically. I'm a Mühlviertler. And, well, this is the northern part of Upper Austria, so that's as close to Germany as you can probably get.
As close to civilization as you can get.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Bavarian civilization is relative, but yeah.
Excuse me?
You're not even from Bavaria.
You don't know where I'm from.
Yeah, I think you mentioned. Yeah, yeah, well. So, can you both please pronounce leichter Einheitswaffenträger bei Rheinmetall? Bismarck, your turn.
Leichter Einwaffenträger. Well, actually, I had something in my mouth. 1 second. Leichter Einheitswaffenträger bei Rheinmetall.
Yeah, this basically means light unified weapon carrier by Rheinmetall. Would you translate it the same way?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the literal translation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word doesn't really make sense. Einheitswaffenträger, yeah, in a way, unified weapon carrier. Yeah,
I mean, universal weapon carrier?
universal. Yeah, universal is better,
Universal
I
weapon
think.
carrier.
How different is German in what you Wiener Serber from the original? I have no clue about that. Do you know anything?
Probably very different.
Yeah, I think this is.
I think the thing you see with languages is that the language in the country where it comes from develops and changes faster than the language that is carried by expats in other countries. So, for example, you have the Korean in Korea is somewhat different to Korean in the United States, because the Korean in the United States, it doesn't develop. It's kind of in a bubble, and it stays as it was when people came over. So you have some Korean Americans, gyopos, that's at least what the Koreans call them, coming over to Korea, and sometimes they have troubles understanding a few words or phrases or the way they explain things, because it's not done in the same way as in their community back home in the United States. So I would imagine that any kind of German community abroad, outside of Germany, will speak with a German that is probably closer to how it was originally when they went there than what High German is now. But that's just a possibility. I'm not quite sure. I don't know how German is over there in Serbian communities or something. I think I once saw a documentary about the German communities in South America, And when you hear them talking, it is quite different than the High German or the German that we know now.
Yeah, I think I agree with that regard because languages changes all the time in ways that we are sometimes not so aware of, and the difference is also quite small. I mean, in Tyrol, in the region, they have different valleys, and sometimes there are a few hundred people in that valley. And if two Tyroleans meet, they usually can tell that they're from a different valley or something, or there's a slight difference. I once heard two talking with each other, and the one said, "I'm from there, from this valley," and the other said, "From this valley." "Ah, yeah, I know this," and blah. And then the one corrected, "But I grew up in this valley," and the other mentioned, "Yeah, I was a bit suspicious because you said you were from this valley, but I heard you pronounce this a little bit different," and I was like, "Oh my god, to hear if they are from a different valley." Yeah, it's like, or some people telling me, for instance, like Bismarck told me yesterday, he can barely hear my Austrian in my German, and there are other Germans that told me I can hear it in every little letter, and some people tell me, for instance, I have a strong dialect when I speak in Austrian, and yet people from my region usually tell me, "Oh, you have a very very weak dialect actually." So it's a really huge spectrum who you ask, and also sometimes it's a question of sympathy. This is also very important,
Yeah.
so that people, if they don't like you, or if they like you, they will view you differently. "Oh, well, he made huge errors," and others, "Yeah, these were minor errors," and something in between.
There's actually an interesting question, like if German soldiers, all German soldiers could understand the lyrics of songs. Like the question here specifically is from Timothy, and he asked for like Lili Marleen. But that would be interesting to look into the regional usage of songs. Like if certain, I mean, in the Second World War, most battalions and regiments were probably quite mixed. It wasn't a localized battalion anymore, a localized regiment. I would think it's more of a mix max between mix max between all regions. So if you want to be, I don't know, a Fallschirmjäger, a paratrooper, then you will probably be serving alongside Bavarians who want to be paratroopers, and Hamburgers and Berliners and Frankfurters and so on. So in the Second World War, it was probably very mixed, which also, I guess, helped Germans nowadays to understand each other a little bit more, because in a way that causes language to close up a little bit with this kind of interaction, which in the First World War and before that you obviously didn't have, because you had battalions and regiments from very localized regions, and they wouldn't really mix between each other. But with songs and so on, I would think that generally the Soldatenlieder or the soldier songs and so on, they are very universal.
Yeah, they were standardized, I think.
Yeah, they're standardized, and they're not very hard. The words they use, it's not regional. There's no word there that is a regional dialect or slang. So you could probably make something out of it, something regional out of it, but probably everybody could understand it and sing it.
Yeah, I think this is one, the media in general, the songs, and this was a standardized German usually, and I think in Austria we have also a standardized version of that for news people. So, and the other thing is, in Second World War there was still very localized regiment, but as you said, paratroopers or elite units usually were not localized anymore. And there was something else. And also the military, to a certain degree, probably also has how you say it, a standardized version, because there are certain terms that are always the same. For instance, when I joined the military in Austria, you don't count eins, zwei, drei, because zwei and drei, two and three sound too similar. So it's eins, zwei, drei.
Yeah, same thing in Germany, I think.
So that you say, I will write that down here. So eins, zwei, drei is like 1, 2, 3 in regular language, but in the military it's eins, zwei, drei. So that you don't mix up so easily, because if it's really in a hurry or something, give me 2 shots, zwei or something, or Schütze 2, Schütze 2. to me, not that the wrong guy shows up in the heat of combat. So, and basically I assumed that the regulations and everything was standardized and also the words. So even if you had a slight problem of understanding one word out of the context, you would understand probably better. So this is also one reason in the military probably that the communication is less of a problem due to the high standardization of the language in general and the formality of everything else.
Actually, I just remembered that in one of the pilot's account I read, there was somebody who once said that his wingman or somebody in his Geschwader was from some obscure region to the east of Germany, and they had a very hard time understanding what he was saying over the radio. And it took him some time, or it took the Geschwader, the pilots in there, some time to tune their ears to the way he spoke, and for him to change a little bit his pronunciation so people understood it more. But I only heard about a single case, so it's not something that I think is anything special and beyond special. You know, it's just this kind of obscure case that doesn't really speak for everything.
So we have a lot of questions. Please, in the questions, put an @ and my name or Bismarck's name before, because so the questions are highlighted, and it's way easier for us to find them. Wie kennst du dich so gut mit how are you so well in military history, Studium, or am I in the German army or Austrian army? No, actually I always say I'm not an expert in military history. I consider myself an expert in information retrieval and communication. I have a master's degree in history and a master's degree in computer science, and basically what I'm really good at is reading up information rather fast and understanding it, because I always focus on understanding. This is also the reason why there are very few videos which are just descriptive. And then converting this information into condensed form for other people. This is how I see myself. So for most stuff, when you see a video of mine, you can assume that 3 weeks before that I didn't know anything about the topic, or very barely. And since now, of course, I did this more than 150 times, I'm already developing some basic understanding. And there's a video, MHV 101, where I talk about this. So basically, I'm still in the learning phase. And of course, I'm always interested in stuff. And I think I had 2 courses on military history and 1 internship in Germany. And I also talk with people a lot and read. So but I'm a information nerd, let's put it this way. So I like information, and I'm also one important part is which you learn usually from studying, to choose the correct books, to find the correct books, because you can read 10 books about one subject and learn less if you have one really good book. So what game does German Voices write?
That's hard. Wolfenstein. I'm sorry, it's true.
I think Steel Division, actually. Steel Division.
Yes, Steel Division does it right, yeah. Company of Heroes is accented English, so no. World of Tanks is really bad, in my opinion at least.
I actually don't know, because I usually don't pay attention. I only knew Steel Division because you mentioned it actually last time.
It's I think Steel Division is pretty much the best one recently. Wolfenstein usually gets the small parts where they talk in German really good. I think they even sometimes joke about the accent. Like some of the accents, or they make some language jokes, which
Yeah. I watched it where he says hot dog.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, and then
They have an understanding of the German language, which I quite like. But many games, I mean, usually games do English and then they heavily accented with German, obviously. But Steel Division probably gets it best out of all the new games.
I have a negative example. I once bought Call of Duty and I got the German version, and the they actually made a huge error. They translated the guard division, the elite unit, well, not really elite, but the better units of the Red Army, into Wachdivision, which is the guard, the garrison division. So, or the guard, in case not the guard elite unit, but the guard guarding the stuff. So basically, which would be a third-rate division. So they completely, by mistranslating, basically completely changed the meaning. And the question from Thomas Tung Yep, would you recommend this book? I don't know it. I never heard of this title. So I can't say. But I'm usually not really into military history. So.
I would be a little bit cautious with any book that goes into alternate history, because a lot of it is just complete speculation.
Then we have one from Benjamin. I can't pronounce his second name. How do you both feel like when Germans are constantly portrayed as villains in media, especially in war movies? Well, I mean, I don't really have a problem with this, and I don't see it that way. I mean, in Second World War, well, it kind of makes sense. I have more of a problem with that you can't play Axis in some computer games, and they basically say, yeah, well, not gonna happen. So, and I think this should be, I mean, it's a very touchy subject, but you also had Company of Heroes 2, where you played basically for a penal battalion. And so I have a problem with, let's put it, if there's a certain agenda that you put someone in the foreground for one reason, like which happened in a recent game, although they were not that dominant in that area or in that case. So, but you completely ignore the other side. So I don't have a problem with being a villain. Yeah, we were the bad guys mostly. I would agree on this. But for me, not being able to play them at all or something is a little bit also denying history.
Yeah, it really depends on the intention. If it's just a fair appraisal of history, and history is kind of taking as a guiding rod essentially for the game, and it's just shown what happened, then I'm fine. But if there's an underlining kind of ideology or idea or dogma that is supposed to make you feel a certain way about certain things, even though things didn't happen that way, then I generally have a problem with it. For example, what I find funny, if it's in comedies, but what I don't find particularly interesting in movies that are not comedies, is if the villains generally, not just in war movies and the Germans, but generally are portrayed as incompetent. And in that sense, sometimes I have an issue with war movies where Germans can't hit a thing, while the Allies always hit everything. But that's mostly on the movies that came out like in the 70s and 80s, and that's not something that is still happening. And it's just fluff armor and so on. So you can't really do anything about it. There was one more question that was a little bit earlier, and that asked us why we Germans always often use the word Jäger, hunter. And I think it's just because it's a very aggressive kind of word. It's a military kind of word. It means hunter. So Panzerjäger, obviously tank hunter. Jäger as in fighter aircraft. It's a hunter up in the sky shooting stuff down. So it is just a word that is very well set to be used in a military sense.
Also, I think it's basically Jäger were usually light infantry, and I think the term Jäger, I mean, not the term, but the unit type, doesn't it go back to Napoleonic times or even before? Weren't there skirmishers in a way? So it could also be a little bit with tradition. So
skirmishers, and there's also, I think, this notion that Jäger are kind of a little bit elite.
Yeah.
You have Fallschirmjäger, then you have Gebirgsjäger, and so on. So generally, it's not something that you have, run-of-the-mill kind of infantry units.
And it's also the civilian type. Jäger is the type who goes out in the woods, the hunter, and kills the animals.
Yeah.
So, for instance, this is not in northern Germany. I think it's not very common, but in Austria and also I assume in southern Germany, this is not a regular job, but it's a common thing to see. So basically, this is an armed man hunting animals. So it's also there's a tradition, because I think I read once about the Austrian-Hungarian army that they mentioned, for instance, that for certain regions, for instance the Tyroleans, they didn't have to teach them to shoot because everyone could shoot perfectly or something. Whereas other regions, they had to teach them or had to drill them more than with others. So it's also, I think, regional. And Gebirgsjäger is a very common thing, which probably most people associate with Jäger first, and is still commonly used. What region from Austria? I'm from Upper Austria. So, what do you think about German campaigning from Hearts of Iron 4? Well, I only played it shortly, so what specific thing you have in mind? There was one for you, Bismarck.
Mhm.
Oh my god, the chat just jumped. Would you say Jäger can mean trooper in military context and hunter in civilian context? I'm not too aware with the term trooper, sadly. I mean, of course I know the song from Iron Maiden, and I know the phrase swear like a trooper, but I never really read into the term. So do you know more about trooper, Bismarck?
No.
There is one. Can you pronounce Vergangenheitsbewältigung? I actually planned to do a video on this. I mean, Vergangenheitsbewältigung, so I write this down now for the rest, because this is a real humongous, I think. Yeah, Vergangenheit. I mean, Vergangenheit is a really long word and basically means the past. And Bewältigung is also a quite, I mean, I would translate it to deal with. But this is Bewältigung is a noun.
Well, coping.
Yeah.
Coping with the past.
Coping with the past, yeah, coping. So it's coping with the past. But the thing is, Bewältigung also, if you look at violence, so you can see there's quite a similarity here with that in that regard. So this word coping with the past itself, as you can see, is a huge word, and I mean, you feel even if you don't know what it means, you get a certain amount of pressure from it. So it's quite a fitting word, because Vergangenheitsbewältigung is basically everything to deal with the Second World War, with the Holocaust and everything around. This is all Vergangenheitsbewältigung, and the name itself just is a huge stone on your soul.
Coming to terms with, somebody says. I've heard that as translation to Vergangenheitsbewältigung as well. Coming to terms with the past.
Well, coming to terms, I think it's not sufficient, because Bewältigung is etwas zu bewältigen means implies a certain amount of energy or even power to apply it, I think. So coming to terms is a bit too easygoing.
The thing is, it depends how you mean it. I mean, if you say Vergangenheitsbewältigung as something that has to be coped with, or something that you have to accept, because if it's something you have to accept, then it's coming to terms with. Whereas if it's to overcome it, essentially, then it would be coping.
Yeah, but bewältigen is a very active word. It's not something about acceptive or passive. So.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I've also seen it being translated in English literature as coming to terms with.
Yeah, but I think this is a euphemism to coming to terms with, because I don't. This is a huge topic, and Bewältigung. It's really, it's like climbing a hill. That's huge. This is Bewältigen you use for huge challenges to overcome them. So coming to terms, I think, is a euphemism in this part. Although you can use it, but I don't think it's fitting. I mean, maybe for Austria, because we're a little bit more on the let's call it we always, we were the first victim, so in a way you could say it in Austria, you could say coming to terms with, but for Austria it's more a big fight. Bismarck, how do you feel about censorship of Nazi stuff? You first.
First of all, internationally, the censorship that we have in Germany is completely misunderstood. I think that would be fair to say.
What do you mean with that?
Well, for example, everybody in Germany, like everybody international, I wouldn't say everybody, but we obviously have specific laws in place that dictate what essentially can be shown in public related to the National Socialist past. It is not that it is completely impossible to show anything from that period. It is not that if you make some kind of project about Nazi Germany, that you will suddenly be pulled in front of the police and arrested and put in prison and with a huge fine. That is absolutely not the case. You can, for example, let's take the example that everybody always brings up, the swastika, right? You can show the swastika in public or in Germany if it falls within certain categories. That's art, that's media, and education. And anyway, that would be like, what, 98% of the use of it anyway at this point. So if you make a painting and you put a swastika in there and it's a recognized piece of art, then that is completely legal.
And it's the bureaucratic part. It must be a recognized piece of art or education. And computer games are not.
Exactly. And that is, everybody who always gets angry that, certain objects or certain symbols of the National Socialist Germany aren't in games. It's because video games are not yet recognized as art or media. And as soon as it is, things will change, obviously. So in that way, you have various, loopholes, let's say. But if you want to make a project based around National Socialism and in Germany, you can do so, provided that it falls within art, media, and education.
Yeah, and another thing is the Germans were always, and also Austrians, are pretty strong on censorship in general. So, and what I find really the hypocritical part is that now they always refer to it, we must do this because of the Nazis, but actually the Nazis did it and people before did it, and I think it's basically still in line with which I call the autocratic part of German culture in a way, and Austrian culture. It's just, yeah, there is a certain way we want everyone to think, and so we censorship everything. And now the excuse is, oh yeah, because if we don't, there will be another Hitler. And I think this is the main huge flaw in the whole discussion, which I also mentioned in one video. And another problem is that it's very selectively applied also with age restrictions. For instance, the movie Stalingrad from 1933, I think, has an age restriction of 12. I mean, this movie is brutal in every sense. But since, and this is what I assume because I didn't rate it this way, but since certain people think this is educational and should be shown to 12-year-olds, because actually we saw it in school several times, they made it, oh yeah, we make it 12 so that the children get educated, or the teenagers. And this is typically a typical main problem where people go along and say, oh well, the end justifies the means. And this is the main problem, I think, with every political ideology. If they have the end justifies the mean as a general approach, it's very wrong. There are certain ways where I say the end justify the means, for instance, blowing Hitler up in 1944. In this case, absolutely justified to kill that fucker. But to kill every fucker immediately with a bomb because he did something wrong, well, no, that's not good, okay? And this is the thing, and this is also the problem with censorship. They usually, okay, let's just censor it.
I think it should also be mentioned that that law that stipulates the use of the swastika, for example, was mainly in West Germany, and it was I think it was not enforced, but it was heavily encouraged by the Allies when Germany became, quote unquote, I would like West Germany became, quote unquote, independent, not really, but 1949, and then in the 50s when it really became a sovereign nation again. And these kind of laws are kind of left over from that period, and in a way, it's if tomorrow, let's say, that law gets scrapped completely, I think next to the domestic fallout that there will also be a huge international fallout.
Yeah.
Because especially in Europe, where some nations try to find always some kind of argument to hit somebody else over the head, and then all the tabloids and so on. I think there is going to be a huge outcry if this law gets retracted internationally. And then maybe at this point, many politicians just don't see it as worth the effort, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, another problem is, I agree with this, I don't know exactly how the law functions or how the laws exactly range, but I know that it's called verfassungsfeindliche Symbole are how you would say verfassungsfeindlich?
Constitutionally
symbols that are threatening to the constitution.
Yeah.
So basically, that's the translation in a way, and they also added, I think in the 90s, the Kühnengruß. For those who don't know, probably most of you, because most people in Germany, Kühnen was a neo-Nazi, and he was also gay, and he died of AIDS, and he introduced a three-finger salute in order to circumvent the Hitler salute. And they added this three-finger salute to the symbols that are threatening to the constitution. And I think at that point it got a bit ridiculous. Because this is where, okay, you add a three-finger salute now that is problematic because the neo-Nazis circumvented that. What next? If they start, everyone wipes their ass from the right side, we will prohibit that you wipe your ass from the right side. I mean, it's an extreme stupid example, but and I think they went too far at that point. Actually, most people don't know this at all, but you can look it up. It's if you don't believe me, it's the Kühnengruß. So, and this is in a way, well, quite overboard, I think.
Yeah, like, guys, I think we'll kind of move on to the next topic here because we said everything we wanted to say.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I would encourage all of you to do is when it comes, to video games, and you see that a certain game developer has not added a certain symbol that you want to have for historical accuracy and so on, consider that the German market for video games is huge.
Yeah.
There's that. Then there's also the international kind of follow that might follow for certain symbol. Usually we don't have that anymore. But, back in the day when Wolfenstein came out, that was a big thing, obviously, the first Wolfenstein. And also before, you scream about censorship and so on, maybe just do a quick, or if you see somebody screaming about this, maybe just do a quick Google search. You'll immediately find the law explained very briefly, very concise, very compact, and you know exactly how it works, instead of just screaming into the ether about censorship and so on. The law isn't ideal, let's say, but it is not as everybody thinks it is. And just a quick Google search will educate you so much on it. And honestly, I would say 99% of the normal use, let's say, of those symbols falls within the established categories anyway. That doesn't mean that the law is, perfect, but I don't think much would change.
Yeah, I would add here, don't blame the I don't blame the companies at all, and I think you should neither, because the threat to them if the game gets censored or that the game was put on the index is huge. We are talking about, let's face it, making a computer game is grand strategy. This involves several years of sometimes teams of several hundred people. If you look at Battlefield 1, I think it took several years, and you have a few hundred people working on it. And for instance, Indy from the Great War Channel also worked as a freelancer there, and I think he wrote the codex entries and all this stuff. There's a huge amount of money, a huge amount of jobs involved. And I don't think they will ever risk that amount of money and also jobs and everything, the responsibility, just because they add something controversial. I see it, I cut something from my videos. I cut one line, for instance, about civilians defending Japan, because I was thinking maybe it will get demonetized, yeah? And we are talking about several years, we're talking about several million of dollars or euros or whatever here. So that they don't make this choice, I understand. And I actually got quite angry when two academics, one in a blog post and another one in his master thesis, noted that basically accused the gaming industry of being not bold enough, thereby completely ignoring the complete economic situation and the complete responsibility those people have to the employees and everyone else involved, and also the complete disregard for the law situation in Austria and Germany in this regard. So basically you want them to risk their games being put on the index or even break law or something just to make a point from a game that takes several years to develop. And if they don't, for a very huge market, we're not talking about a heavy metal band or something that basically also invested quite some time into an album, but they don't employ hundreds of people. And this is where I am, as a basically self-employed person who looks also at economic situations, get sometimes quite angry with academics that sometimes seem to be completely oblivious to this. And I think they actually have the brains and should understand this. And also they are usually in the liberal arts sometimes completely ignorant of the law situation, because if in the master thesis I think he wrote basically it wouldn't be economical, and I think he didn't mention as a part that's a problem with the law if you put the Holocaust in a computer game. This is, for me, it was like, I'm still quite fuming, as you probably can hear. I must exert self-control now. So we have we had some questions over there. There was a word. Can you pronounce Schützengraben-Vernichtungspanzerkraftwagen? Yeah, I think I
write that down. Break it down.
So we make that
down.
Yeah, I write it now. Schützengraben-Vernichtungspanzerkraftwagen. So we have Schützengraben, which is trench, or a rifleman trench.
Yeah, because Schützen would be a rifleman essentially.
Yeah.
Graben would be a trench in a way.
Or a slit, yeah.
Yeah, a slit. Vernichtungs would be destruction.
Yeah.
Panzer armored. Kraft, power, Wagen, vehicle.
So, and Panzer. Panzerkraftwagen, you wouldn't use that, because you would say Panzerwagen. Yeah, but yeah. Panzerkraft.
Well, in the abbreviation, there would still be a K.
Yeah, it would be Panzerkampfwagen usually in this, not Kraftwagen. Yeah, but Could be. So, what else do we have? Bismarck, if you got Boy Scouts or Cubs, to use the phrase singers alone. Okay, yeah. Talk about robots instead of soldiers in Half-Life back in the days. It's the same censorship laws applied. Yeah, there was for Half-Life they used, as far as I know, robots instead of humans. So they turned down everything. I think the tipping point was how is it called? Star Wars Dark Forces, which was basically Doom without blood and with stormtroopers. And they put it on the index. They put it at 18 years or something.
That, to be honest, that's also the time when video games kind of got into the mainstream. And a lot of people that were not in the mainstream were exactly the people that were making the laws. So they were extremely, well,
Borderline
They were-
retarded.
they didn't know what they were doing.
I mean,
I think
I
some
think
of them.
this was 2 years after Stalingrad with 12 years, okay?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, the Stalingrad is a movie that's established. That's an established
yeah, I
part of us. Video games aren't. And I mean, with the whole, what kind of age group should be applicable for what kind of game? I mean, you had the German media, would say that World of Warcraft was like a horrible game because you slaughter like infinite amount of people and so on and so forth. They didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Funnily enough, a couple of years ago, the same media that did all the kind of campaign against video games in Germany rolled out a documentary citing everything they got wrong.
really.
Every single thing. Yeah, they did. It's on ZDF, I think, Neo or something.
How long did it take? 20 fucking days?
No, I think it's like an hour or an hour and a half, but they pull out all the big kind of experts in quotation marks that gave talks. The Galileo guy who gave a talk at Hard Aber Fair and so on, and you see completely how the media got it completely wrong because they didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And I think, honestly, to take this a little bit further, that a lot of the skepticism that the younger generation nowadays has in Germany towards the media comes from there.
Yeah, I think so too, actually.
Because back then it was us against our parents, with our parents being backed up by the media, believing the media more than their own kids when it came to these kind of video games. I mean, when this started, I wasn't allowed any kind of shooter. When this started in Germany, I wasn't even allowed Star Wars kind of shooters. I wasn't allowed nothing. The only game I really had, funnily enough, which my parents thought was okay, was Age of Empires. Age of Empire 2, which is actually more gruesome if you think about it.
I
Or
know.
the civilizations, than a shooter like a Jedi Knight or something from Star Wars. But this kind of gives you the idea that it's the same thing when the bikini came out or rock and roll came out. Yeah, the people that make the laws are not behind these kind of social movements. They don't know exactly what they're talking about. And some of them that work exactly in the kind of offices, maybe they know, but they are also under pressure by politicians, by the older society, which is usually the one that has the most power. Like it's the kind of between 30s to 50 years old generation that always has the most power in society, I would say. Do something against this kind of trend. When my parents were young, rock and roll came out. Their parents thought, it was something of the devil. Why? Because the media told them it was something of the devil.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
I think it's kind of. I mean, this goes on since the ancient times, and I find it quite distressing that we still act on this level. And the thing is, to a certain degree, you can say, okay, I understand that this was 20 years ago, but it took 20 or 30 years to get this basically right, because we're still not there. And this is where I say, guys, I mean, are you that slow? It's not like, sometimes it's like, oh my god, it's what's going on, the information is out there and everything, but some people don't seem to want to adapt in any way. This is quite weird. And I think, yeah, for me it's the same with my media distrust comes basically from heavy metal and being a heavy metal fan and a computer game fan, because I saw early on, okay, you are lying. You're basically lying or telling complete utter bullshit to a level that's and why should I trust you in politics? I basically trusted them a long time in politics, but then in recent years, especially after I visited some other countries and I saw how stuff there is handled, I started to think, okay, maybe guys, you should look outside because you're claiming a lot of stuff how bad we are in certain ways, which is not true anymore. It was at certain points, but in other points we definitely evolved quite substantially. So, what we have here? What is your opinion about Rammstein? I'm not really a Rammstein fan, which is basically everyone who listens to metal outside of Germany and Austria is really a Rammstein fan. I watched them once on a live concert in Vienna, but it's not really my type of music to a certain degree. And I know there's a little bit of a cultural problem. Most metal bands work their way up, and Rammstein basically jumped into the mainstream, and also all the popular guys at school were from the very beginning Rammstein fans. And I was not a popular guy, so I know I'm probably dislike Rammstein a little bit more than I would if it wasn't for this background. I just love your accent when you say bullshit. Thank you. Do you think that part of the hardware failure to properly establish a successful intelligence service on the Ostfront is attributed to the difficulty of learning Russian? I only read a,
No.
I only read a little bit about Fremde Herre Ost, and I think this was not really a problem. One problem was it was really closed off, and another problem was, of course, institutionalized. That basically, I think everyone wanted its own intelligence service, and I mean, this also I think was a problem with 9/11 recently. That they said we had all the information, but it wasn't properly centralized, and I think the institutional problems in Germany when it came to intelligence, which is usually a weak part of Germany, besides signal intelligence and the technical part, is probably was not a language problem. But you wanted to add something, Bismarck?
I was just going to say that since back then Germany still had the provinces in the east, you could probably find people that were quite adapted speaking Russian or a bit of Russian. And you also had a lot of Russlanddeutsche, which came back to Germany during the 30s. And I think those obviously helped us well with Russian. I think the big problem was next to obviously that everybody wanted to be in charge of their own intelligence service was believing the intelligence they had. Because in some regard, the Germans were not always very receptive to what their intelligence guys were telling them. Especially on the Eastern Front, I think.
Yeah, it was also quite limited. I remember that from the PhD from Paul, who noted that they basically didn't know the high command structure of the Red Army in 1941.
Yeah.
So, question: have you played Red Orchestra 2? Yes, I have. There's actually at least one video where you should see getting me killed in that game. And actually, Bismarck killed me once, and I killed him once too in Red Orchestra 2, completely by accident. It was quite funny.
Oh, that was on both stream, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on both stream, and I think I shot you first, and then you burned me with the flamethrower. It was quite quite a hilarious experience.
I just ran at you. I remember. Yeah, I didn't know it was you. I just saw this one guy shooting at me. I just made a beeline for him, and then once I was enraged, my flamethrower got you.
Yeah, and
I think you sniped me at some point, like from 120
yeah. The first time I shot you, and then you wrote me on Steam chat, "Ouch," which is basically "ouch." How you can translate "ouch" into English?
I don't know. But well, just translate it to anything you would scream when you yeah, that's the Wilhelm scream essentially.
So, do you like Sabaton? Yes, I like Sabaton. I've seen them 3 times live. Opinions on Sabaton. I really like them as a live band, but recently there's the problem that they have the joke noch ein Bier instead of some other stuff like Gott mit uns. And actually, I don't find the noch ein Bier joke under quotation marks very funny. I find it actually quite atrocious, and to a certain degree that actually it decreases my enjoyment of heavy metal concerts, and usually this doesn't happen so easily. But maybe I'm getting just old and grumpy as fuck. So, are you interested in making a video on the overall advantages of Prussia and the Franco-Prussian War? Yes, this at a certain point will be coming. I yesterday also started reading a little bit again on Prussia. My main problem is where to start, and I'll probably start with Frederick the Great first, because that's most interesting, and then I'll probably work my way up from the Second World War down to the First World War, and from Frederick up to Napoleon, and then somewhere I will meet with the Franco-Prussian Wars, probably in the middle or something, because I'm basically completely oblivious to the Franco-Prussian Wars or Franco-Prussian War. I mean, yeah.
It's really interesting.
I want to get the opinion of on how did Germany get the manpower so fast after World War One? Like during World War Two, Germany had like so much manpower. So I mean, I'm not really sure. I know what you mean. I definitely knew that France had a manpower problem in World War One because their fertility rates were going down, whereas Germany was still growing. And for the Second World War, the French actually wanted, in the long-term strategy, counter that with colonial troops. But the general, I mean, there was how. I mean, the point is, in war, actually, the amount of people that die is rather limited. So, and there were 20 years between, so basically all the new kids, there was not a much of a decrease.
There were like 1 to 2 million German civilians had died during World War One due to famine mostly, or starvation. But if you look at it after the war in the 1920s, and if you make the math, then obviously by the time they make their kids, yeah, and at that time it was still more common than now to have a lot of kids,
Yeah.
and one after the other essentially. And if you'll do the math, then you'll realize that if you made a kid in the early 20s, then by the time World War II comes around, he will be at an age where he is, militarily speaking, at his prime. Maybe some of them are probably a bit young, like 16 or 15 to 16, but they obviously were pulled in quite early. And then you have people like 17, 18, 19, and that's essentially where they're, well, prime is maybe a big word, but the time between those two wars is pretty much just enough to remake a new generation, let's say. And you, of course, still had kids that were born in 1910 and during the war that also survived, and they obviously then also became soldiers later on. And the veterans from World War One, some officers obviously also went part into the manpower, but a lot of them ended up being in the war industry and so on, being craftsmen.
Yeah. I don't get this question. Maybe you get it, Bismarck. Blackhound 1. Can you and Bismarck say the word? Would love to hear you try it. What word?
Apparently, he says that YouTube keeps deleting the mission, the word. Hound, you can send it to me over Discord. Because it's strange. Like, I don't understand it either.
Maybe I have some filters in there for bad words, which is due to basically I think in late 2016 there was, I think, a lawsuit or a penal law incident in Austria with a politician because he didn't delete a certain post in time. So basically I have to set up a lot of words so to make sure and check sometimes comments, because I don't wanna run in troubles with the law. So because someone made a remark on my channel, so probably it's one of those words.
It's the word that I just posted in chat.
Wait. So, can you say it, or is it?
Hippopotamos.
What?
I don't.
It's
Oh,
that.
it's the fear of long words. Apparently, it's like, yeah, yeah. It's like
It's definitely not in my spam filter or in my bad words filter. Ah, Hypotomonstrose Sophia. Yeah, now I can't say that. So wait, uh, and Bismarck, can you say for some reason keeps deleting the word? So there was another. Are you interested in cover the e-Gefahr and the efforts in the war wars? As far as I know, this is a Holocaust war crime issue, and as you can see in my frequently asked question, I don't cover those because, well, YouTube will certainly demonetize it, and the political fallout and everything, and yeah, it's basically running into a minefield, and I'm not really interested. I mean, I'm already dancing near a minefield, and I like to be near them, but I don't like to run into them.
Yeah, I mean, for us, YouTube, it's been a great opportunity because obviously we make our money out of this, but we also have to be a little bit careful and obey essentially the terms of service that YouTube has. If we want to use their platform, we're kind of obligated to accept those, and as such, it sometimes for certain topics we just have to be a little bit careful because even if just one video gets demonetized, that can, on the paycheck at the end of the month, be quite a significant thing. And if you're perhaps a little bit younger and you don't really have an income yet, and everything is sponsored kind of for you, you might not understand how that can pose a problem. I didn't as either when I was younger, but now that we are working and this is kind of our job, and we have to have a paycheck at the end of the month. We make our choices of topics carefully, and in a way, we have to wage the risk against the reward. And I can tell you personally, for example, one of my videos was recently completely demonetized, even after I asked for a review, and it's because the picture. I think it is because the picture is of a Heinke 111, and you see the swastika on the tail.
Wow.
I think that is the reason why it was, and then I didn't realize that when I made the video, I didn't talk about anything that was in any kind of way risky, but it's just because that picture had the bloody symbol that YouTube demonetized it. And we like Bernhard said, we are in a minefield. We are careful where we tread. We want to bring the content that is interesting, that is engaging, but we have to be careful sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 videos basically that were permanently demonetized, and this is the nuking the beaches one, which I completely understand because it's about nuclear war and chemical weapons and biological weapons, so I completely understand it. But I also had 2 another ones. One of the Art of War series was also, which I don't know why, and the second pronunciation guide about Steel Division was also completely demonetized. And these 2 I don't have no clue at all why they were demonetized. So
YouTube doesn't tell us anything. They
yeah,
don't tell us why.
they.
So yeah.
I even talked with a partner manager, and no, you won't get info on that. Yeah, because I don't know why. So will you make a video about the French army in 1940, like how de Tassigny and his men pushed back the German 3 times on the Marne and how they held the Alps? I don't know. Probably I will. There will be definitely more on the Battle of France. Probably. For that, I want to get the Blitzkrieg legend from Karl-Heinz Frieser, which I probably would have already bought if it wasn't for that Apocalypse, because basically I think I postponed a lot of book purchases due to this, because it dropped tremendously. I mean, it's not hurting, but I had to cut investments, and I'm not sure if that's covered. Would be an interesting topic. I might look into this, but the French army in general probably too. I think there will also be a book out from the same series, the Red Army, from Alexander Hill, which I used recently in a few videos, and if it's on par with that, it's very likely, because if I have a book from 2017 or 2018 about the French army in Second World War, and it's on quality with the Red Army, which is excellent, I think, that really makes stuff easier, because, for instance, with most of the books I have, they are quite old, and sometimes I have to double check if everything is correct, and if I get a new one out from 2017, I don't have to think if this information is correct. I know that's a high-level scholar. I mean, Justin knows him actually, and great publisher, and so I don't have to double-check some stuff. Still, I usually look up some other information, and this really pushes the information forward. Wie alt sind Sie, Bismarck und Military History Visualized? I don't know if Bismarck will tell you, but I'm 36.
I'm old enough.
Yeah. So, you, military history visualized, you've mentioned that you were active in politics once. Which party, local or big politics? Any success? Well, I was active in Austria and in Germany actually, and it was once local and once was student politics. But in the student politics, I was quite successful, because on my university level, I secured enough votes that on the federal level we actually put in. And which party, the problem, I could name it, but it has a complete different meaning now, so I won't name which one. But it was, I would say, nowadays you would say it's clear in the center. So nothing of the both, or neither of the to the right nor to the left, and mostly about, let's say, libertarian, probably freedom, like freedom of speech, low taxation, don't tell me what to do, and just care about the basic stuff. So basically nothing that's happening right now. Do we have any
What is the public opinion about Manfred von Richthofen? You know what, Celso, I'll tell you something. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody in Germany that knows Manfred von Richthofen that is in the age of between 15 to 30. They will not know who the hell you're talking about. Even if you say the Rote Baron, they will probably think it's some kind of clown, the Red Baron. People don't know Manfred von Richthofen. It's just how it is. People forget, and it's not being taught at school.
Yeah.
In Germany, I know this is very different. For example, in France, where they talk about, for example, in school they talk still about Gueumer and Foch and so on, and all these generals and soldiers and aces. And it's the same thing in the UK, where students can make special project about a certain kind of quote unquote war hero. In Germany, that doesn't happen at all. It's macro history for those periods, and that's it.
I mean, I have a funny story from South America. There was a plate with the names in this Ecuadorian school I was once working, and from the graduates, and in South America, in Ecuador, it was in the jungle region. I must say that, because in Ecuador you have basically 3 nationalities with 3 regions, so they are quite different. And they took basically a lot of names. For instance, I had pupils that were called Michael Douglas, or I had a Stalin, and I also had a Lenin. But on the plate, this guy was Jesus Rommel. And I always depicted that Jesus sitting on a Panzerkampfwagen free and riding through the Libyan desert, yeah. And how is that related to the Richthofen question, you probably ask? Then I think I was in Chile, and I met a German exchange student, and I told her that, and she smiled a bit, but I thought there was something on, and then I asked her, and then she didn't know, as an exchange student, who Rommel was. So she never heard of Erwin Rommel, which is probably, I would say, the most famous military guy in Germany at all. Would you say that?
I think. Yeah.
And we're talking here about exchange students, so we don't talk about the uneducated. I mean, so it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I don't know pop songs, so maybe it's something different. But I think
it would be hard pressed to find a German pop song that goes something along the lines of Rommel, 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 you know. So
and Bismarck, if you guys want to borrow Blitzkrieg-Legende, just write me. Would be an honor to help. Thank you. I usually try to get the books because it's usually less of a hassle. I think it's not in the local library badly. That I'm quite astonished about this. So are you going to do a video about the Netherlands? Do you speak a little Dutch? I don't speak Dutch at all. But the thing is, when Dutch. Okay, but the thing is with Dutch, if I walk somewhere and Dutch people walk in front of me, usually it's like, oh, they're English, and 5 minutes, oh, they're Germans, and then, oh no, they must be Dutch, and usually they're Dutch, and I really like Dutch people. All the people I met traveling from Dutch were awesome. And about the Netherlands, at a certain point, I probably will do a video about the Netherlands. Probably something more. I actually don't have an idea. I mean, I could do about the Fallschirmjäger landed there, right? In Second World War. Eben einmal was it in Belgium?
well, there's Fort Emden, which was in Belgium.
It was in Belgium, but Netherlands was also the
Same thing.
Pardon?
It's the same thing. Belgium, Netherlands, it's the same thing. It's the highway to France.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm really bad in geography, so I'm not sure. Maybe in recent history there was something you were pretty good. Oh, you were always really good in trading, but yeah, it's not the. There were some Dutch wars. I will try. I actually aim to have one video for every also small nation. I mean, I did one for Romania. I did 2 or 3 videos specifically about Poland. So, but I stopped recently also to do more popular videos because I realized, okay, first get everything going, and then when everything is really secure, I do some of these smaller videos because then I can afford it, or I also have more of a free, let's say, I like to have a secure firing base or financial base usually, and then I expand into the more smaller parts. This is basically my strategy. You wanted to interrupt me, but I didn't let you?
I forgot.
Ah, good.
Good.
It worked. Wait. Not knowing who Rommel was, that's a shame. Serious question, can you please check the Reichsflugscheiben theory and those alleged plans of UFOs, if they are hoax or not, and say why or why not? I'm not really sure what I should investigate there. I mean, I doubt there is much to it. I mean, actually, there's probably more to the German atomic bomb, because there was a historian, who wrote a book, and then the German community wrote back a complete book with all of counter articles, something. And a friend told me actually that he wrote a counter book to this again. So this would be actually, but you're the Luftwaffe guy, Bismarck. What do you say about the Reichsflugscheiben?
Yeah. I need a book on this. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's UFO. Just because it's UFO doesn't mean it's Luftwaffe.
Question for me: how does Danish sound to you? Basically, when I'm far away, sometimes it sounds German, sometimes it sounds English, and when I'm closer, it's like, yeah, it's basically a mix between German and English. And to read it is really awesome because it looks like a German dialect in written form, having a threesome with English and German, and with a lot of umlauts.
Be honest, from my point of view, Danish does not sound very nice.
No, Danish. Sorry, Danish. I was speaking about Dutch. Sorry.
Oh, is it Dutch or Danish? I'm not sure.
No, he wrote Danish. So
okay.
I don't know how Danish sounds.
It sounds interesting. I mean, you can see the link to the Germanic language, but let's just say I prefer Norwegian and Swedish, even though it's very close to Danish, than Danish. But yeah, that's just me. Dutch itself, I mean, if somebody speaks Dutch and somebody else speaks German, usually they can understand what each other is saying. It's going to be a little bit hard on the more specific vocab, but you can hold a conversation pretty easily. At least that's my experience. And I've, of course, learned Dutch. I haven't spoken it in a long time. I try to get one of the guys in Hydra to speak Dutch with me all the time, but he doesn't seem to be interested, which maybe reflects on my Dutch, because it's pretty atrocious by now. But it's fairly easy. I mean, as far as I know, the Dutch that we know nowadays is pretty much how German would have sounded in the Middle Ages. I don't mean that in any kind of bad way to the Dutch language. It's just how it is.
So there's one question for you from QA Library, and before that I will answer the question from Epic Flammo. Will you talk about the Finnish Winter War at some point? Well, actually I did already in 2016, but I will definitely talk more about it. It's very likely that I will talk about the Soviet side, since now I have from Alexander Hill, The Red Army. Did I mention already that I like this book?
Yes, you did on multiple times.
So, and here's the question for you, Bismarck. Why was an English company, not a German company, used to redesign the Berlin Parliament building? I did not hear any issue from that.
What? Sorry, can you say that again?
It's QA Library. It's also marked at Bismarck, so you should be seeing it.
I see it. Why was an English company? I don't know. Maybe when was this?
So you don't know. Okay, then I move on.
Was it was it the one when they made the glass cupola to symbolize transparency? I don't know. Maybe they made the best offer. If it was during the time of the European Union and a company makes a better offer, then
yeah, it's usually that way. So, George Bezos at Military History Visual and Bismarck. Can you both say a sentence in your best Russian? I want to know what a German accent in Russian sounds like. I only can say Do svidaniya, Rodina, or Niet, and Da, und Davai. That was not really a sentence, but you, Bismarck?
What was it again? Ja nie говорю по-русски и говорю по-немски. Maybe? That's kind of the only thing I know. I actually want to learn Russian because I want to read the books about Soviet aircraft in Russian because they don't really translate the good ones. But what I try to say is, I don't speak Russian. Do you speak German? But I don't think that was very good.
There is one for you. Wait, where is it? Bismarck, you pronounced my name correctly on the first time. All my German friends have done this as well. People of my native language don't always mention this. I speak Portuguese. Okay, so that's what necessary.
Interesting.
At me, so the thing is, Iron Sky is based on actual theories that are meant serious about anti-grav vehicles allegedly tested and built by the Nazis. Would be nice to review. I don't think they had anti-grav vehicles at all. So Bismarck,
No, they didn't.
Bismarck and military, please say Squirrel. Do Germans and Austrians pronounce it differently? Squirrel? Yeah. You Bismarck?
Squirrel.
Yeah. I probably refer to it to the beginning of this stream when it will be put online after this. So where I talk extensively about the German and the Austrian version of Squirrel, Eichkatzel and Eichhörnchen or Eichkätzchen. So, can you teach how to pronounce Flugabwehrkanone?
Just like that.
I think Flugabwehrkanone, I covered this already in my first video. I think, pretty sure I did Flugabwehrkanone. What was the next question? Why didn't the Nazis conquer Switzerland? I actually have a video on this likely to happen. Someone provided some good information on it, but I hadn't time to look it up yet. So it's on my long list, I would say that. But in a way, I would say guess. First of all, they needed some connection to the outside world, and second, why you want to conquer a rock full of armed people?
Definitely, like, and if we say armed people, we mean armed people.
Yeah, really
I
armed
mean,
people.
I know some Swiss people, and obviously they're all reservists. And what they told me, I don't know if this is true, but I guess it's common knowledge, is that pretty much all bridges in Switzerland have a designated man who is supposed to blow them up when he gets the signal. I don't know if this is true. Maybe it's just a myth or a joke, but I'm pretty sure that, if you, I mean, if you've ever been to Switzerland, the Alps and so on, I mean, it's horrible territory to conquer. And the fact that the Germans got Austria is pretty much because the Austrians threw themselves at the Germans.
Yeah.
And the Swiss people would also throw themselves at the Germans, but in a very, very different way.
Yeah.
So, taking Switzerland would be doable, but I mean, serious. I mean, the Luftwaffe would probably just bomb the hell out of the
Rocks.
cities. Yeah, but because you can't make tactical strikes against the army, it would be impossible.
Yeah. I mean, there's also this thing. If you look at the culture in in Austria, it's basically, if you look at a road sign, it's written it's 5 kilometers to this town. In Germany, it's written 5.3 kilometers, and in Switzerland, it's 5.32 kilometers. So it gets crazier a bit. So, and I think they fight this way also. You don't want to mess with the Swiss.
Yeah.
Not at all.
I mean, they have like 3 to maybe even 500 years of peace, but they are prepared.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're Italy, if you're France, if you're Austria, if you're Germany, anybody who has a border, like they are prepared. And here's actually somebody, Derp Squad. Until 2001, all bridges in Switzerland were rigged with explosives and could be blown up remotely, just in case.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, even if there are bridges that this isn't the case, this shows you kind of how prepared they are, and they're also very, I don't know if this is correct, but very decentralized a little bit. So every kind of regional platoon or battalion or whatever, they kind of know what they're doing in their specific area. The funniest parts of it is maybe when they get lost in the mountains and they walk into Austria, they walk into Liechtenstein or Germany. At that point, that they obviously tell the other person, "Oh, sorry, we breached your borders." It actually happens quite a lot. But they know exactly how to use their terrain. They've been there like for 500 years. They know every single corner of these mountains.
So there's another question from Noobstar. Why do Austrians, at least in school, view themselves as victims and not as accomplices of the Germans in World War II? Well, this is a quite complicated question, or in a certain way also quite easy. I mean, the simple thing is referring to the Moscow Declaration, where it actually stated that Austria was the first victim, and in the next sentence they also note that we have a responsibility, but everyone ignored this just in Austria. And to distance us from Germany in many ways, we said, yeah, we were the victims, and also to get rid of our guilt. And yeah, it's like the cheap way out.
It's easier, yeah.
Yeah, it's easier. And the other thing is also that there was, to a certain way, it also had a positive, or it wasn't to a certain way necessary. The thing is, Austria after First World War wanted to join Germany immediately. Also, Austria itself we called it Deutsch-Österreich, German-Austria. And all the other names also included Germany or German in the word. And the Versailles Treaty prevented or forbid an Anschluss in 1918. So, as you can imagine, 20 years later, after a huge financial crisis or economic crisis, whatever, and many, many problems, Hitler was quite welcomed, but the Nazis also tried their Kulturkampf in Austria, where they basically tried to get rid of the Catholic Church or fought it. And in this, actually, the Catholic Church won. I mean, they probably wouldn't have won if the war went another way. And this also created some negativity about the Germans. And in Austria in general, we really dislike Vienna. But the thing is, a professor, think he noted this, during the Second World War, the Austrians learned, they rather be that they prefer Vienna to Berlin, in a way. So it has one part is to deny responsibility of the Holocaust and the war crimes, and the other part is to create the nation itself, because if you're close and very similar, you have to point out every difference. This is also which I mentioned before, why there's a stronger dialect after the Second World War in Austria happening, were used to distinguish themselves. This is also the same in Switzerland, which have a very distinctive dialect. So this is basically all about nation building and the whole origin story, basically.
Yeah, it's quite funny with the Austrians. I mean, they're very quick to be insulted when somebody says that Mozart was German. But if somebody else says that a certain person was Austrian, you should see the reaction of the average Austrian. It's hilarious.
I actually don't care about Mozart.
I know you don't, but
I mean, he was from Salzburg, so I mean, the point is when some people argue, yeah, because now it's in this country or in this country, it's like, okay, so Kant is a Russian now.
Yeah.
So Bismarck or military visualized, did the partition of Germany in 1945 led to some language differences between East and West of Germany?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. And we still have that kind of difference a little bit now.
A little bit less, but certainly, yeah. There's actually a lot of differences, not just languages. Culturally, East and West Germany is still quite different. You won't see it as an outsider, you'll see it as an insider, let's say. There's still the whole divide between Aussie, which means somebody from the East, and Wesi, which means somebody from the West. There's a lot of jokes, obviously, and yeah, I mean, there's stereotypes. There's a lot of stereotypes attached to it as well. You know, where people from West Germany say some things about people from East Germany and vice versa. And most of it is not very flattering.
So is Bavarian German different from rest of Germany? Yes, I would call it a South German dialect, similar to Austrian. If so, why there be a difference? Why exactly? I would say the area, and I don't exactly know how dialects work in this way. Then next has a bunch of German pronunciation videos. Watching them may induce side effects. Yeah, like 50% increased marching speed. Do you have an interest in, will you ever talk about the psychological effects of warfare on surviving German and Allied World War II veterans? Could be, actually. I mean, I basically mentioned it a few times I think in the Luftchat or something. For instance, when you're talking about memoirs, that you should always consider that what these people went through, and that some coping mechanisms and some psychological side effects may change the interpretation of
Justification.
and justification and everything. I mean, so, but in general, as far as I know, it was not, I don't think it's very well studied neither. So, and it's also not sure how popular it is and how hard it is. So I'm interested usually in psychology, but not sure if there's much benefit to say that, yeah, they were badly traumatized and nobody dealt with them. This is probably would be a summary, I suppose. Like the 4 cases in each gender for each word, does it take you effort to remember all the rules, or does it come naturally? Actually, it comes naturally, and as far as I know, the human brain doesn't, in the first 2 years, the human brain doesn't make a difference between your mother language or your native language and a foreign language, and this sets up, I think, after 2 years usually, if I'm correctly informed. And basically, I know the grammar rules for Spanish better than for English or German, because I learned Spanish later on, and for English and German, for English they are so long ago, and it's basically just a habit since I watched and read everything in English, so I don't know the rules. and for German it's the same. I don't know the rules. I can't apply them all the time usually. I make some certain errors. For instance, in German they make a distinction when you use V and Rs for a comparison, but which we don't do in Austria, and also I think in Bavaria we are not so picky about this. And so basically it comes naturally. So you don't have to use those rules usually. I think I have with the das, I have a problem which I usually fuck it up. But this could also be a little bit of dyslexia or something. You never know. Will you ever do a video on Mark Manstein's backhand or third battle of Kharkov? Yeah, that's very likely. Do you have an interest in, will you ever talk about the, we had this already, all bridges, will you make of Switzerland the stages of World War II? Yeah, maybe when I cover why Switzerland was not invaded, I will probably cover a little bit more about Switzerland, but probably not more than one video in general. Is Erich von Manstein the best general of World War II? This is my 69th petition, thank you for your understanding. I don't know yet at all. I would say I would have to spend at least 5 more years before I could answer this question in any way. Many argue he's one of the best on the operational scale, so he's a very likely contender, but the problem is, I mean, comparing a German general with a Russian general, with an English general, with an American general is basically, this is completely insane for many different reasons. They entered the war at different points. Their armies were prepared in different forms. They had completely different industrial and manpower situations and everything. So to say he was the best is, I think you can make a video about which I started. I mean, it was planned as a series, and I will continue it about what was the best which were the best tank designs, which makes a little bit more sense. But for general, it's, I mean, let's face it, even if they only had one division, a division is around 14 to 17 or 18,000 men and equipment, and one versus one division and one general, I mean, alone the difference between two divisions from two different nations is quite huge if you look at the different training levels, the different doctrines, the different equipment, the logistics situation, everything. And we're talking about generals commanding army groups, or at least armies sometimes, on corps. So I don't think it makes any sense to say who was the best general. I mean, you could focus on one aspect and say who was the best general, for instance, in a certain leadership aspect. For instance, for motivating his soldiers or for promoting the best people or something. If such in a small scale, you probably can make such an assertion. But for everything else, I'm a bit too probably academic or not. I don't want to be too specific and say, okay, this was the best. I don't think this is.
Most people have their minds made up. Oh, I couldn't talk anymore. Most people have their mind up made anyway. Have made their mind up anyway. So Bernhard and me, we get a lot of questions about, can you make a video about the best general of World War II or the best plane of World War II? It's like he said, there's so much context in it, and how. What was the question I get a lot because I do military aviation? It's like, make a video about the best plane of World War II. I mean, how do I do that? Because obviously what came out in 1939 was, in performance-wise, completely different to what came out in 1945. Of course, I can make then, contextually speaking, during the specific time frame, certain planes were the best and so on. But most people that ask these questions, it seems to me that their mind is already made up and they just want to have it reinforced by some, by YouTuber they like maybe. But, that is the reason why they perhaps ask it. And I get this a lot with, can you, I literally get these questions saying, can you make a video to explain why the Y-109 was the best plane of World War II? Can you make a video explaining why the Spitfire was the best plane of World War II? If you already come with such a question, with such an opinion, then whatever I say about it is not going to change anything. And that is just an observation that I had, having this kind of quote unquote job. A lot of people are just looking for confirmation bias. Essentially, they're literally actively looking for something that confirms what they themselves think. Mostly, if they would pick up a couple of books, they would realize that their own opinion, which is mostly clouded by what the media is saying about certain things, or what documentaries say about certain things, that there's so much more to it, and that it's really impossible to make any kind of those videos.
So here's another question at you and me. I read once that the Germans occupied the British Channel Islands. This is
Yes.
correct as far as I know. Why and how did they do it? Paratroops or amphibious assaults? I actually don't know.
They had Guernsey and Jersey, and funny bit of trivia, they issued special currency for those islands, and that is one of the most highly valued currency that you could buy now. It's like one of the, from considering that it's only 70 years old, those notes are extremely expensive for their age, the money they issued there. But to answer the question, they didn't have to do much. They did it for a staging ground for Operation Sea Lion. And I think they just landed there with a couple of amphibious troops and 1 or 2 planes. The British Army had no presence there. I think there was like a police station on one of them. That's all of it that there was. So they literally just landed and took control of the island. There was no shot fired as far as I know. Maybe some old grumpy Englishman went to the pub and got his Winchester rifle and fired a couple of times at them. But I don't think so.
So say this letter. I think that's not an Ö, but I say Ö. Have you ever played the board game Axis and Allies? I think I once played the computerized version. I think probably more than 10 years ago, but not against the humans. So, at Bismarck and Military History Visualized, or anyone who is German, do any of you know the show Die Anstalt? Yes, and it's only written with 1 L. I have to say that. I know it a bit, but pulling out the full grammar Nazi, Anstalt.
Anstalt.
So I know it a bit, and people are really positive about it, some people, but I think I've watched it a few times on YouTube, but for me it's, German humor.
It's all right.
It's German humor, it's, well...
It's okay. Sometimes it's good, in my opinion. The problem is, I'm somebody, you can put it down to my lack of humor, maybe, because I'm German. I do like the kind of political humor that we have in Germany. It's a lot of satire on politics and so on. It's in a way where you can talk about more difficult subjects and maybe contrast things and show hypocrisies or any of that kind of stuff. What I don't like about it, however, is, and I know this isn't an obligation that comedians or satirists or whatever they are called have. But it's a lot of critiquing and saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, but it doesn't offer an alternative. And I completely know that it's not in their job description to give alternatives. They're not policymakers.
Yeah.
But sometimes just too much of this is wrong and this is corrupt, and here the politicians did something like this, and our pension system is completely fracked, and because of this and this. All of that is funny. But at some point, I'm just like, I wish, we could get something going here where we can point out how we fix all this. And again, it's not what politicians do, but I see you actually type Volker Pispers there.
That's my favorite German comedian.
He's really good, yeah.
He
also has a very astute ability with the German language.
Yeah.
And he can, the way he phrases things and the way he says things, you have to have a relatively high level of German to understand it already. I know Germans that don't understand a hell, what Volker Pispers is trying to say. And this is also, I think, the reason why a lot of people abroad think that Germans don't have a sense of humor, is because a lot of our humor that you see on TV is political and is word plays, and requires you to have quite a high understanding of the language. So yeah.
Yeah, to do a pun in German, it's. I mean, I make this joke that in 1940 Hitler posed to the German general staff, you can make 20 puns, or you can draw up a plan how to invade Russia, whichever you think is easier. And they definitely went with Operation Barbarossa, and for good reasons, because the chances were better in doing this. And making a pun in English is quite easy. I mean, basically all the jokes I have in my videos and cultural references, if I would do them in German, they wouldn't be funny at all. It's not the Germans are not funny. It's the language. So, would you ever consider doing a video on the occupation policy during the war, Flammenpolitik in specific? I probably won't do occupation politics because it's not, or occupation policy because it's not really my interest. Maybe in relation to the economic situation, probably, and maybe also to recruiting in terms maybe of the in terms of Barbarossa, when certain countries joined to attack the Soviet Union in the anti-Bolshevik crusade, which was it called in a certain way. So maybe in that regard, but else I don't think so. How bad is Kliment Voroshilov when it comes to tactics or strategy? I don't actually know. I think they named the tank after him, but I don't know him, so I have to look him up. As said again, I'm reading myself up into topics. Bismarck, what about Hungary today? In parentheses, Austria. I don't know. Do you know what he means?
No.
Okay. Add military history visualized. How long will you be streaming today? Actually, I don't know. I actually plan we do only 1 hour, but I think we usually do it and then we can't stop. So for the last time, so now it switched. Where is it? Damn it! I hate when the chat stumps. Erich von Manstein. Austin was also partition. For the last time is Aaron. No, I don't answer that. What do you think about Tyrol during the Napoleonic Wars? Andreas Hofer, and your personal opinion about South Tyrol, Südtirol. I know very little about Tyrol during the Napoleonic War. I know Andreas Hofer, and actually one of my ancestors was painted by the same woman who painted Andreas Hofer. And we still, I mean, some relative now has this picture, but besides that, I never read into this. I am actually really bad in Austrian history. So as you can tell, I mean, I have one video so far covering Austrian history with more than 150 videos. So Austria was also partitioned. Is it still noticeable? No, not at all. It was partitioned, yes, but it's not noticeable anymore. I think in 1955 with the Staatsvertrag, it ended on the so I read once that the Channel Islands. Okay, we had this question already. Obsidian, don't want to read my comment. I covered that already. Okay, we are way behind in the questions. Yeah, how far back history-wise does your interest in military history go? Back to the ancient times too, or is it more about 19th century before? The thing is, during my studies, I was quite interested in ancient history, but when it comes to making actual videos, I realized I like hard sources. Yeah, then I realized medieval times is not mine, and the ancient times also. I like Rome, but to a certain degree, it's about, if you just read when they discuss how big the Praetorians were and when they changed and when went back, and that they have evidence, archaeological evidence from the garrison of the size and everything. It's like, oh, well, you don't really know, and they argue all the time, and then it's okay. So basically, I declared myself to focus mainly from Napoleonic times towards contemporary military stuff for the major time frame, but to do also certain stuff like Prussia, Frederick the Great before that, and certain videos maybe also different. And yesterday I checked some of my articles on the ancient world again, and I have quite a lot of copies about the Varusschlacht, so the Bavarian, the Teutoburg, the battle in the Teutoburgian forest. Well, it didn't happen there. It happened at the Kalkriese. So it's likely. To be honest, my topic strategy. I have a strategy for nearly everything, but when it comes to certain topics, I'm ultra chaotic. Yeah, it's just everything is planned, but my topics sometimes just change. So could be that next 3 days an ancient history topic drops up, but it's very unlikely. Will you make a video about the Sahne front? Do you know anything about the Sahne front? I never heard this one.
The what front?
Sahne front. Sahne.
Sahne as in whipped cream.
Yeah. So you never heard it either. So okay, good. We had to Google that. Can you make a video confirming Heinz Guderian point that the Po-2 was the best aircraft of World War II?
Oh, it shot down a jet in Korea, so yeah. At least apparently. Sahne front was apparently the front lines with Denmark.
Ah, okay. So
We already talked once or twice about making a video about Denmark, but it's...
Bismarck, I didn't hear if you already answered this question. Yeah, it's a great. Yeah, we. Can you make a video on how Erdogan sees his power in Turkey and how they are parallels to the Machtergreifung in 1933? I don't think I will do this. it's. Let's point it out. There are a lot of Turkish people living around here. So, and I don't know how usually they react to certain things. There are some things I won't cover, like the Yugoslavian wars in the 90s, because we have a lot of ex-Yugoslavian people here. I mean, I'm usually fine with all of them. I mean, I went to Slovenia, I went to Croatia and everything, but in certain ways it's too close to home. So and there's many other interesting topics I have. So how was this?
We've seen what happens when you make a video about that topic with the Great War channel. So
yeah, this is also they shut down on several of the Balkan videos the complete comment section. And we don't, Bismarck and I, we don't have the manpower. We are one-man armies. The Great War has several people, and if they can't manage, it's like, okay, it's not worth the effort. The thing is, I don't think I will ever run out of topics. I mean, today I got a new cool book, Principles of Naval Weapons, which is, it's awesome, with formulas and explanations and all the basics. It's really great. So, how was the Swiss with trenches in World War I right at the border? Was the shelling a problem for the Swiss with the Rook shells landing on Swiss soil? I don't know. Do you know, Bismarck?
no.
So will you ever make a video on the Japanese army doctrine referring to the emperor cult and lack of retreat? This is very likely. This will be very likely covered, or probably if I can get Justin on a stream again. I mean, he was never on a stream, but on the chat, we could also talk about this. But I have from Dria, I have an article, I think, about this. And I also know the book which should become tomorrow is about the Chinese, actually. So, but I'm pretty good in the Pacific stuff right now with books. So, oh shit, the chat moved on again.
Yeah, we're approaching 2 hours here, though.
Yeah. Can you do a video about partisans in World War II, like the resistance front? Partisans, I'm not sure, because it's also very close to the war crime issue always. So I like guerrilla warfare, or interested in it, but in World War II I probably skip it due to the whole demonetization and war crime issue, especially in the Soviet Union, because the Eastern Front was, yeah. So, do you know about the battles at the Berg Isel during the Napoleonic Wars, and what do you think about it? I don't know yet. I know the Berg Isel. It rings a bell, but not much. I think a person asking about Hungary was asking about the Austrian language in Hungary. How is this different from regular Austrian? Hungary, the Hungarian language is very similar to the Finnish language actually, and quite distinctive from everyone else. And I think Bismarck actually knows more about this.
I don't know exactly the reasons why it is, but I've lived in Finland for some time, and I still have friends and family there. And I know that the Hungarians that go to Finland have usually a very easy time learning the language, and they usually have a very soft or accent. You can't really hear out of them that they are foreign. Well, you can hear they're foreigners, but you're not. It's not a penetrating kind of accent like most other people have. And I know of one Hungarian person who was on the same rugby team as me, and he spoke fluent Finnish after 2 years. And many people didn't realize he was Hungarian until they told him. They always thought he came from some shady province somewhere in Finland, and they couldn't really tell where he came from. And he was in his 30s, so that's not the best time to learn a language anymore. And he did, really, really well. And I don't know how it is for Finnish people learning Hungarian. I would probably imagine it to be pretty much the same. But it's strange how that actually developed, because if you look at the map, obviously, Finland and Hungary, they're in the same on the same continent, but they're not in the same geographical region. They don't share borders or anything. They're I don't know what's the distance between them, 700, 800, 900 kilometers as the crow flies. So yeah.
So now the final question, will you make a video about Soviet naval doctrine? As far as I'm aware, the Soviet naval doctrine said a single submarine can sink a battleship and a fleet of subs could sink a fleet. Not really sure about the naval doctrine. I know that the Russians or the Soviets had a lot of submarines, and I'm not sure if you're referring to World War II. I'm talking about World War II right now. And I think there's a book about Stalin's fleet actually from a German military historian, Rover, so could be that I do at one point look at this, but it's not on my short list, especially because I have a lot of naval stuff right now which I want to cover, but it's mostly for the Pacific. And so I usually try to use the sources I have right now instead of buying new books. I mean, I buy way too much anyway, so but yeah, it's one of my vices, buying books. So then I would say thank you very much for joining us, Bismarck, and everyone else, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks very much for having me, and thanks very much for being here.
So thank you for watching, and see you next time.